My dear chosen one, this message is not a coincidence. You are here because God has drawn you, because deep within, your spirit has been yearning for confirmation, for clarity, for a sign. This is that sign. You are chosen. You always have been. And now, more than ever, God is calling you to embrace that truth, not just in silence, but openly, fully, and without fear. I know that life has not always been easy. There have been moments when you've questioned your path, when you felt unseen, unheard, maybe even forgotten. But God has seen every tear. He has heard every whispered prayer. He has counted every moment of waiting. And now, He is speaking to you, gently but firmly, saying, "My child, it is time. You don't need to be afraid. I know that stepping into your calling can feel overwhelming. I know that revealing who you truly are, a chosen one, can bring uncertainty, even doubt. What will people think? Will they understand? Will they accept me? But hear me, you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out. You were meant to shine. Think of Esther. She was just a young woman, living an ordinary life, until God called her for something extraordinary. She was afraid too, but Mordecai reminded her, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther 4 verse 14. And now, I ask you the same, what if everything you have been through, every challenge, every heartbreak, every moment of waiting, was preparing you for this exact moment? You don't have to force anything. You don't have to strive. Just take a breath, quiet your heart, and let this truth settle deep inside you. God has chosen you. He has set you apart. And He is calling you forward. So today, if this message speaks to you, take a small but powerful step. Let it be a declaration, not just to the world, but to your own heart. Pause for a moment, breathe in His presence, and comment 999 below. Not just as a number, but as a prayer, as a quiet yes to the calling God has placed on your life. You are not alone. You have never been alone. And as you take this step, know this, God is walking with you. He always has been, and He always will be. My dear chosen one, there is something special inside you, something that God Himself placed there. It is not by accident. It is not random. It is a divine calling, a purpose, a light that was never meant to remain hidden. For so long, you may have felt the weight of silence, the fear of stepping forward, the hesitation of revealing who you truly are. Maybe you have worried about what others will think. Maybe you have questioned whether you are worthy, whether you are truly chosen. But hear this today, God Himself has chosen you. And when God calls, it is not a question of whether you are worthy, it is a confirmation that you are already appointed. Look at Moses. He was a man who doubted himself, who tried to run from his calling. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? Exodus 3 verse 11, he asked, thinking he was not enough. But God didn't ask Moses to be perfect. He simply asked him to step forward, to trust, to move in obedience, and God did the rest. Look at David. A shepherd boy, overlooked by his own family, unseen by the world. Yet God saw his heart. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart, 1 Samuel 16 verse 7. And because David stepped forward, he became a king, a warrior, a man after God's own heart. Look at Paul. A man who once persecuted believers, a man who was blind, literally and spiritually, until Jesus met him on the road to Damascus. The moment he surrendered, everything changed. For I have appeared to you for this purpose, to appoint you as a servant and a witness, Acts 26 verse 16. And Paul became one of the greatest messengers of the gospel. Do you see the pattern? Every great man and woman of God had a moment of decision. A moment when they had to choose faith over fear. And now, dear one, this is your moment. God is calling you to step forward. Not in arrogance, not for attention, but because you carry something that the world needs. There are people waiting for you to rise. There are hearts that will only be touched when you finally embrace your divine purpose. And here is the greatest promise of all: you don't have to do it alone. When Moses stepped forward, God parted the sea. When David stepped forward, God brought down Goliath. When Paul stepped forward, God opened the eyes of nations. And when you step forward, God will move on your behalf in ways you cannot even imagine. But first, you must say yes. So today, let's make it real. If this message is stirring something deep within you, write "I am chosen" in the comments below. Not just as words, but as a declaration. Say it out loud, even now: I am chosen. Let it settle in your heart, let it take root in your soul. You are not here by accident. You are not watching this by chance. This is your moment to step into the light. God is calling. Will you answer? Fear is a thief. It whispers lies into your heart, convincing you that you are not enough, that you will be judged, that stepping into your calling will cost you too much. But today, hear this truth: fear does not come from God. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7. Every chosen one faces this battle. The moment you begin to walk in your divine purpose, fear will rise against you. It will disguise itself as self-doubt, as insecurity, as the voice of others telling you that you are not capable. But what if I fail? What if they mock me? What if I lose everything? Let me remind you, God did not choose you to make the world comfortable. He chose you to shake the world awake. Think of Noah. Imagine the ridicule he endured as he built the ark. "You are crazy," they must have said. Rain. A flood. Where is it? But Noah did not let the mockery stop him. He obeyed, and because of his obedience, he and his family were saved. Think of Esther. A young woman, hidden in a palace, afraid that speaking up could cost her life. But her uncle Mordecai reminded her, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther 4 verse 14. Esther stepped forward, risked everything, and saved an entire nation. Think of Peter. A man who walked on water. But do you remember what happened? The moment he took his eyes off Jesus and looked at the wind and the waves, fear took over, and he began to sink. Matthew 14 verse 30. Fear will drown you if you let it. But when Peter cried out, "Lord, save me," Jesus immediately reached out his hand and pulled him up. Beloved, what has fear stolen from you? How many times have you felt the pull of destiny in your heart, but allowed fear to silence your voice? How many dreams, how many callings, how many miracles have been left unfulfilled because fear convinced you that you were not enough? Today, that ends. God is calling you to rise, to step forward, to silence fear with faith. You were not called to please the world, you were called to glorify God. And let me tell you this, when you step into your calling, yes, people will talk. They will doubt, they will mock, they may even reject you. But do you know who else was rejected? Jesus. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. John 15 verse 18. And yet, he fulfilled his purpose. He never wavered, because he knew that his mission was greater than the voices of those who doubted him. And so is yours. Right now, I want you to declare war against fear. Say it out loud: fear will not stop me. I will walk in my calling. Let these words become a weapon against every doubt in your mind. And if you are ready to step out of fear and into faith, write "I am fearless" in the comments. Not just as a statement, but as a promise to yourself, to God, and to the destiny that is waiting for you. You have been chosen for such a time as this. Step forward. Do not let fear steal one more moment of your purpose. There is a moment in every chosen one's journey when silence is no longer an option. When God has placed a fire within you, it is not meant to stay hidden, it is meant to shine. And now, God is calling you to step forward, to proclaim boldly and without fear, I am chosen. Jesus himself said, whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. Matthew 10 verse 32. This is not just about words, this is about activating the divine power in your life. When you declare publicly that you are chosen, you are not just speaking it, you are stepping into it. Look at David. He was anointed in private, but it wasn't until he stepped onto the battlefield against Goliath that the world saw what God had placed in him. He could have stayed silent, let fear control him, but instead, he declared his faith before the enemy. And that declaration, the Lord will deliver you into my hands, 1 Samuel 17 verse 46, was the turning point of his destiny. Look at Moses. Called by God at the burning bush, he hesitated. Who am I to lead? What if they don't believe me? Exodus 3 verses 11 to 13. But when he finally stood before Pharaoh and declared, let my people go, the shift happened. His declaration unlocked the miracles that followed. Look at Jesus. He did not keep his mission a secret. He stood in the synagogue and read from Isaiah, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the captives. Luke 4 verse 18. That moment changed everything, because his public declaration was the beginning of his ministry. Now it is your turn. Some of you have been carrying a calling, a purpose, a destiny that you have been too afraid to speak out loud. You feel it deep inside, but fear has kept you silent. Maybe you are afraid of what people will think, afraid of rejection, afraid of stepping into something greater than yourself. But hear this truth, no great move of God ever happened in silence. Every breakthrough, every miracle, every transformation began with someone bold enough to declare it. The moment you say, I am chosen, the atmosphere shifts. You activate something in the spiritual realm. You step into alignment with God's will for your life. And yes, the world may question you. Some may doubt. Some may even mock. But when has faith ever been about seeking approval? Faith is about trust, obedience, and stepping forward even when you don't have all the answers. Today, God is asking you, will you keep hiding, or will you proclaim what I have placed in you? If you are ready to take that step, declare it now. Write, I am chosen, in the comments. Not for me, not for anyone else, but as a public declaration to God and to yourself that you are stepping into His calling for you. This is your moment. Do not let fear silence you. Speak your truth. Declare your chosenness. Because once you do, God will handle the rest. Right now, there may be people who doubt you. They may question your purpose, laugh at your faith, or dismiss your calling. But do not let their disbelief shake you, because when God elevates you, even your enemies will have no choice but to acknowledge His power. Think about Joseph. His own brothers despised him, mocked his dreams, and cast him away. They thought his destiny was over when they sold him into slavery. But what they didn't know was that God was writing a greater story. Years later, when famine struck, they found themselves bowing before the very brother they had betrayed, Genesis 42 verse 6. The same voices that once ridiculed him had to recognize the power of God in his life. Look at Gideon. He was an unknown, the least of his family, hidden away in fear. But when the angel of the Lord appeared, God didn't see his limitations, he saw a mighty warrior, Judges 6 verse 12. People may have laughed if Gideon had told them he would one day lead an army. But when God's hand was upon him, even with only 300 men, he defeated an enemy too vast to count. Those who had once looked down on him had no choice but to admit, this was the hand of God. And what about Jesus? The very people who shouted, "Crucify him," were the ones who later saw the empty tomb. The Pharisees who mocked him, the soldiers who ridiculed him, they all witnessed the resurrection. And whether they wanted to admit it or not, they could not deny the undeniable. This will be your story too. The people who mocked you, they will have to watch as God elevates you. the ones who doubted your calling. They will see doors open that no man could shut. Those who said you would never make it. They will see the undeniable evidence of God's power in your life. The enemy wants to use ridicule to silence you, to make you feel small, to make you question yourself. But hear this today: what they think does not define you, what God says about you does. And He says, you are chosen. So do not waste another moment trying to convince the doubters. God will do the proving for you. Your job is to keep walking in faith, keep trusting in His timing, keep stepping boldly into your calling. Because when the time comes, those who once laughed will have no choice but to acknowledge the glory of God working through you. If you believe this, declare it in the comments. They will see God's power in my life. Let it be a statement of faith. A reminder that you are not defined by the opinions of others, but by the unshakable power of God's plan for you. Your time is coming. Keep going. The very people who doubted you will soon have no choice but to recognize the mighty work of God in your life. It is not enough to simply say you are chosen, you must live like you are chosen. Words alone are fleeting, but a life rooted in divine purpose is undeniable. Your actions, your faithfulness, your perseverance, that is what will prove to the world that you have been set apart by God. Look at Noah. He didn't just say he believed in God's calling, he built the ark before a single drop of rain had fallen. People mocked him, called him a fool, but he remained obedient. And when the flood came, his faithfulness became his testimony. Genesis 6 verses 9 to 22. Consider Esther. She could have stayed silent. She could have hidden in the palace, fearful of what speaking up might cost her. But she understood that being chosen requires action. She stepped forward, risking everything, and saved her people. Because of her courage, God's plan was fulfilled. Esther 4 verse 14. And what about Jesus? He did not just declare who he was, he lived it. He walked in compassion, in truth, in divine authority. Even on the cross, he proved his mission through sacrifice, and in his resurrection, he fulfilled the greatest calling of all time. This is your time to do the same. God did not call you just to speak about your purpose, he called you to walk in it. Your trials were not random, they were preparation. Every hardship, every moment of doubt, every battle you've endured, they have been shaping you for this moment. Do not let them be in vain. Use them. Let them be the foundation on which you stand, proof that God has been refining you, making you stronger, more resilient, more prepared than ever before. You don't need to convince anyone with words, your life will be the evidence. The way you carry yourself, the way you rise above adversity, the way you walk with unwavering faith, that is what will silence the doubters. Let your faith be louder than their skepticism. Let your success in God's purpose be the answer to their disbelief. As you step fully into your calling, expect God to move. He is a God of fulfillment. When you walk in obedience, He will pour out blessings, not just in one area, but in all areas of your life. Financial breakthroughs, healing, spiritual peace, all these things are the fruit of a life surrendered to God's will. So now, ask yourself, are you ready to prove your calling through action? Not just by what you say, but by how you live. Are you ready to step forward boldly, unshaken by the opinions of others, unwavering in faith, committed to walking out what God has placed inside of you? If you are, declare it in the comments, I will walk in my purpose. Let this be your commitment. Your statement of faith. Your moment of surrender to what God is calling you to do. Now is the time. The world doesn't need more words, it needs more chosen ones walking in the fullness of their divine calling. Will you be one of them? This is your moment. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right now. You have heard this message because God is calling you to take action. This is not just another video, this is a divine wake-up call. It is time to rise. It is time to step into your chosenness. Think about Moses. When God called him, he hesitated, saying, "Who am I to go before Pharaoh?" But God didn't ask him if he felt ready, he told him to go. And because of that obedience, Moses led an entire nation to freedom, Exodus 3 verses 10 to 12. This is your moment to step forward, just like Moses did. Look at Peter. He could have stayed in the boat when Jesus called him to walk on water. The waves were high, the storm was fierce, but he stepped out. Yes, he wavered for a moment, but Jesus reached out and upheld him, Matthew 14 verses 28 to 31. God is calling you to take that same step of faith. Are you ready? Now, here's what you need to do. Declare your faith right now. Go to the comments and type, "I am chosen." This is your public declaration, your first step in stepping fully into God's plan for your life. Share this message. There is someone in your life who desperately needs to hear this. Someone who feels lost, someone who is doubting their worth, someone who needs to be reminded that God has a plan for them. Send this video to them now. Subscribe and stay connected. This is just the beginning of your journey. Surround yourself with messages that build your faith, strengthen your spirit, and keep you moving forward in God's purpose. Click subscribe so that you never miss the encouragement and guidance you need. The world is waiting to see God's power in your life. People may have doubted you, overlooked you, even dismissed you. But they will soon see what God has placed inside of you. Just like Joseph's brothers once betrayed him, but later had to bow before him in awe of God's plan, Genesis 50 verse 20, so will those who underestimated you witness the hand of God moving mightily in your life. Are you ready to step into this destiny? This is your moment to respond. Don't hesitate. Declare it. Believe it. Walk in it. Because the time is now.